and forming judgment about others. Often, a person says one thing but communicates something totally different through a vocal intonation body language. These mixed signals can force the receivers to choose between the verbal and non-verbal parts of the message. Most often, the receiver chooses the non-verbal aspects only. To illustrate this, think about how vocal, facial, and bodily behavior can change the meaning of the following statement. Spoken to a student completing their first month of placement, overall things seems to be okay. The same words can convey praise, uncertainty, annoyance, disappointment, sarcasm, indifference, depending on the accompanying nonverbal cues. When a message is very mixed, for example, combining words of praise with body language, conveying annoyance, or words of criticism accompanied by a cheerful, smiling face, the result can be a creation of tension and distrust. The receiver senses that the communicator is hiding something or is being less than candid. This raises an important point. Often we are unaware of non-verbal cues we emit and take. So I'm saying something and good, I'm praising someone, but with the facial expressions of raising my eyebrows and like doing all some facial actions which are a little bit not in connection with what I'm saying. So with the other person who is at the receiving end will only have more focus on my facial expressions, that is non-verbal things, than the verbal. So that is the meaning of this. So the process occurs when a little conscious awareness on the part of the sender or a receiver. Sometimes we carefully monitor what we say in order to ensure it has the desired effect. While paying little or no attention as to how we say it, the non-verbal leakage can, however, more truthfully reflect our underlying thoughts or feelings about an issue. However, we can learn to be a better communicator through enhancing self-awareness, self-knowledge, as well as developing better skills at reading non-verbal cues emitted by others. So body, face, arms, hands, legs are media of body language. In fact, face is autobiography of a person. So your facial expressions speak for it is like what you want to emit. Next is a cultural and a non-verbal messages. As we have seen, much of the meaning we derive from communication comes from non-verbal cues, as we just discussed before also. While we tend to focus on what we say, it is the non-verbal communication that proves to be significant in conveying our message and forming judgments about others. Often a person says one thing, but communicates something totally different through vocal intonations and body language. These mixed signals can force the receiver to choose between the verbal and non-verbal parts of a message. So some forms of non-verbal communication or non-verbal messages are not always straightforward to understand and compared with verbal language can be highly ambiguous. For example, the signs that someone is lying to us are very close to the signals of anxiety or nervousness. Often we react to the combination of such signals rather than just one. The suspects that we are being lied to when a person avoids eye contact, hesitates before they speak, etc. So developing an awareness of nonverbal behavior can be vital in improving our ability to communicate with others. However, it can be important to check out our understanding through good active listening and asking reflective questions. Some forms of nonverbal communications are as facial expressions, eye gaze, postures, gestures, voice, personal space, distance, and personal appearance. So all of this, we are done with this chapter. So just to gist up this chapter, what all we have discussed in this chapter is, this is a fifth chapter. We have discussed on various aspects, firstly on how to writing, reading, and the skills of reading and skills of writing, speaking and listening, and order the written communication, and how a reading should be made effective. What is the reading process? What are reading skills? What is reading for writing and what speaking? The importance of for public speaking, understanding the audience before we speak, communicating effectively, and presentation skills, how we have to present a skill before we get into what are the skills we have to adopt. And listening, factors affecting efficient listening, listening skills, and nonverbal communication skills in body language, and this culture of nonverbal message and some forms of nonverbal communication. So these are all what we have read in this chapter. So questions mostly, as you all know, might be the question papers are also shared with you, but the questions mostly asked in this are: explain communication skills in detail, explain the importance of public speaking and what precautions to be taken when giving a public speech, identify and define some barriers to listening that you can have aware of in your own experience where you're able to overcome the barriers. Explain briefly about reading and reading skills. These are the mostly questions asked in this chapter. Then we'll move on to the next chapter, which says communication and society. Communication and society in this, what we are going to know is role of communication in society, impact of society on communication process, communication and social change, communication and culture, concept of information and knowledge society. These are things what we have to discuss. First is role of communication in society. Communication is a process of sending and receiving information among people. Human communicate with others not only by face-to-face communication, but also by giving information via mass media, that is internet, printed products such as books, e-papers, televisions, and all of that. So many people believe that significance of communication is like the importance of breathing. Indeed, communication facilitates the spread of knowledge and forms a relationship between people. As we have discussed in all the starting chapters, what is communication? Communication is like breathing is saying, without that we cannot live only. Okay. So first of all, communication helps us spread knowledge and information among people. For example, authors write books to impart knowledge to the world, and teachers share their experience with the students. Also, friends or co-workers discuss their ideas with each other. Companies exchange information with their subsidiaries and customers. Besides, the advent of the internet not only allows people to have better access to knowledge and information in all fields, but also makes it easier and faster to contact with people around the world. Okay, moreover, communication is the foundation of all human relationships. First, strangers start talking and getting to know each other, and then the relationships are formed. When they have more interaction and communication, communicating helps people to express their ideas and feelings, and at the same time helps us to understand emotions, thoughts of others. As a result, we will develop affection or hatred towards other people, and positive or negative relationships will be created. First, we'll be strangers. Later on, after 2 or 3 meets of communication, we'll become friends or foes, whatever. So next is for transfer of ideas. What for the communication is used? It is used for transfer of ideas. To transfer ideas from one person to another, communication plays a vital role. Every human being has some ideas that are unique to his own mind. Many of these ideas can be implemented in real life and can turn into a major creation too. But to make the transition from just a thought to an implementation, it requires effectual communication. Hence, the idea should be communicated as a plan, drawing, or describing so that it can be created further. Next is for interacting with society. Communication is used as a mode to interact with society. First to transfer the ideas, next to interact. So it is very important that we interact with our surroundings and people living in the surrounding. Whenever we talk to someone, we unknowingly react to his or questions, actions, or comments. This is communication. While corresponding to someone in any way, we are actually communicating. Healthy communication is essential for a healthy society. Next is for education. Communication is used for education also. To educate someone, we need to communicate the idea in the syllabus, as I'm doing now, or the study material to the student. Education involves a collection of all kinds of communication, that is, audio, video, books, lectures. However, the deal is not just to communicate, but to communicate effectively. Inefficient communication can lead to transfer of ambiguous knowledge. Next is to update oneself. So, communication is also used to update oneself. In the modern world, nothing is more important than staying up to date. Only through proper channel of communication can keep people be updated with current affairs, important events across the globe. Communication is the actual transfer of information through various mediums in such a way that it caters to the needs of people from different strata of life. News can actually stands for as a collection. What is news? It's just a collection of information from all the four directions. That is east, north, east, west, and south. News, not NEWS. Okay. That in turn is delivered to us through various communication channels. For entertainment today is mostly based on the channels of mass communication like films, television, moreover, theater and other arts also communicate certain ideas to its audience. Internet is another common platform for entertainment, which again is a mode of communication. In short, we can safely conclude that communication and entertainment are entwined in today's world. It is infotainment to understand the world. Why communication is there? It is to understand the world also. Unless we communicate with the world, we will never understand the way things function and how things are piled up and related to one another. People are just a fragment amongst these things. Did you know that other elements of the world also communicate to us, but in their own ways? We need to interact with the environment in order to understand life. People who do not communicate tend to get isolated, which thereby leads to many problems. So these are the types of communications. Role of communication in society. Why the communication is required is to transfer of ideas, for transferring of ideas, for interacting with society, for education, and to update ourselves, and for entertainment, and to understand the world. What is next is the impact of society on communication process, how it is impacting. Countries need a healthy, vibrant civil society with networks of individuals, groups, and organizations. Change is much more likely where people are involved in discussions on issues that affect them. The fabric of civil society is woven from the ongoing communications and exchange between people through interpersonal, informal, and cultural process, as well as through formal institutions and official challenges. A healthy civil society is characterized by vibrancy and quality of networks between individuals, groups, institutions, and organizations. And the social capital they create, information and communication are fundamental to this process. Decades of research on issues as diverse sustainable agriculture has shown that where people are involved and engaged in discussions of issues that affect them, societal attitudes, individual behaviors are much more likely to change. Communication also lies at the heart of good governance, where government are responsive, accountable, and capable of fulfilling their functions with the active engagement of civil society. So, Indian society is often characterized as one of unity in diversity and its villages as independent republics. Indian society was highly stratified and hierarchical, communication tends to flow from persons of higher status to persons of lower status. In any communication situation, the relationship between the source and the receiver was that of dominance and subordination. In spite of this, there are some dialogues between the two. Both shared a common frame of references, which made a communication smooth and effective. That is the impact of society on communication process. Next is a communication and social change, how a communication has made a social change. Our society is a changing society. There are various elements in our society which makes it to change frequently. This is called as a social change by sociologists. Social change means the changes that are taking place in the entire fabric of our society. Some changes can be seen and some of the changes can't be seen. The same changes takes place gradually, yet some other changes take place too fast. We have which is called a social evolution, meaning the changes taking place slowly in the society. We have also something called a revolution, which sees changes taking place too violently. The society undergoes changes from time to time due to various reasons. We may or may not like these changes, and some changes are acceptable to us, and some other changes are not. But communication acts as an open force in providing changes in our society. We need change for betterment of the people and for providing modernization to our people. Communication provides various kinds of information relating to people's development and progress. Communication acts as an opinion leader in many cases, whereby they shape our opinion. So good communication motivates an individual, and by following a good instruction, we'll surely have a good output. Since communication is the basic fundamental instrument for a good relationship, this will help in binding a good relationship between two or more individuals. Even simple relationship lies through good communication. So communication depends also on the way we deliver the message. Different individuals of different educational backgrounds have a different way of giving instructions, and also the educational background of an individual have a different way of giving instructions, have a different interpretation on things and issues. So communication for a social change can be achieved by conducting training, seminars to enhance the practice for development and social change, with an emphasis on participatory approaches, such as dialogue between private and a public organization, will lead to a community-based decision making, the collective action. This action will lead to a long-term social change. Communication is really influential to attain social change, and through proper designations of information among the participants in the community will surely promote unity that leads to a good and sustainable social change. Next, communication even unites people. At times, if there is not proper communication, it may have a disharmony and the relationship may break. But if it is a good thing, it may even unite people. So social change can happen at the level of an individual, community, an organization, or a society. Communication unites people from all walks of life, regardless of culture, gender, educational attainment, civil status, and ethnic groups. Such diverse phenomena as roles, gestures, values may differ widely from one culture to another. Since the effects of culture are pervasive and extend to an almost infinite number of behavioral characteristics, it is likely that language structure is also affected. If culture is considered as a global concept, it would appear that language and interpersonal behavior is only one aspect, a very important dimension of culture. All forms of social interaction, the language people speak is the most compelling and enduring source of cultural identity. So communication for social change is a transforming effect of human communication. There is technological revolution of information and knowledge society. Communication for social change will offer a common framework to all the researchers which focus on the social impact of growing channels of human communication. Professionals from education sector, audiovisual communication, human computers interaction, journalism, sociology, psychology, social frame, and telecommunication. Okay. Next is communication and culture. Now, till now, we have known about communication and social change, how the communication changes the social behavior, and how it unites the people, and how it diversifies the people, and how a cultural things can be impacted in it. Next is a communication and culture. The term culture refers to complex collection of knowledge, language, rules, rituals, habits, lifestyles, attitudes, beliefs, and customs that link and give a common identity to a particular group of people at a specific point in time. All social units develop a culture. Even in two-person relationship, a cultural develops over time. In friendship and other relationships, for example, partners develop their own history, shared experiences, language patterns, rituals, habits, customs that give that relationship a special character that differentiates in it various ways from other relationships. Example, it includes special dates, places, songs, events that come to have a unique and important symbolic meaning for two individuals. These are best examples are two friends of with different cultural backgrounds can become a friends if their thoughts match. If their communication and if they're so-called, we say it's a wavelength matches, then they can be a good friends also, in spite being from different cultural backgrounds. So groups also develop cultures composed of collection of rules, rituals, customs, and other characteristics that give an identity to the social unit. Where a group traditional meets, whether a meeting begins on time or not, where topics are discussed, how discussions are made, how the group socializes are all elements of what over time become defining and differentiating elements of its culture. Organizations also have cultures, but often apparent in particular pattern of dress, layout of workplace, meeting styles and functions, way of thinking about and talking about the nature and directions of the organization, and leadership styles, and so on. The most rich and complex cultures are those that are associated with a society or a nation, and the term culture is most commonly used to refer to these characteristics, including language and language usage patterns, rituals, rules, and customs. So, thus, any social unit, whether a relationship or a group or organization or a society, develop a culture over time, while the defining characteristics or a combinations of characteristics of each culture are unique. All cultures share certain common functions. These three such functions that are particularly important from communication perspective are linking individuals to one another, providing the basis for common identity, and creating a content for interaction and negotiation among members. Next is the relationship between communication and culture. What is the relationship between a communication and a culture? The relationship between communication and a culture is a very complex and intimate one. First, cultures are created through communication. That is, communication is the means of human interaction through which cultural characteristics, whether customs, rules, rituals, laws, or other patterns, are created and shared. It is not so much that individuals set out to create a culture when they interact in relationship, groups, organizations, or societies, but rather the cultures are a natural byproduct of social interaction. In the sense, cultures are the residue of social communication. Without communication and communication media, it would be impossible to preserve and pass along cultural characteristics from one place and time to another. So one can say culture is created, shaped, transmitted, learned through communication only. The reverse is also the case, that is, communication practices are largely created, shaped, and transmitted by both the ways. To understand the implication of this communication culture relationship, it is necessary to think in terms of ongoing communication process rather than a single communication event. For example, when a three-persons group first meets, the members bring with them individual thoughts and behavioral patterns from previous communication experiences and from other cultures of which they are or have been a part. As individuals start engage in communication with the other members of this new group, they begin to create a set of shared experiences, the ways of talking about them. If the group continues to interact, a set of distinguishes history, patterns, customs, rituals will evolve. Some of these cultural characteristics would be quite obvious and tangible, such that a new person joining the group would encounter ongoing cultural rules to which they would learn to conform through communication. So new members would in turn influence the group culture in small, sometimes large ways as they become a part of it. It is a reciprocal fashion. This reshaped cultural shapes, communication process, practices of current and future group members. This is true with any culture. Communication shapes culture and culture shapes communication. So both are vice versa. This shapes that and that shapes this. Culture shapes communication, communication shapes culture. So what are the characteristics of a culture? Cultures are complex, multifaceted, as it is apparent from the above discussion that structures that consists of wide array of characteristics. The culture of relationship groups are relatively simple compared to those of organization and especially societies. Cultures are subjective. There's a tendency to assume that elements of one's own cultures are logical and make good sense. It follows that if other cultures, whether of relationship group, organization, or societies, look different, those differences are often considered to be negative, illogical, and sometimes nonsensical. If, for example, an individual happens to be in a good relationship with that is characterized by public displays of affection, that person might think that the behavior of other people who have more reserved relationship cultures may seem strange, even inappropriate. The person might wonder why a couple would not be more open in displaying affections to one another in public. The individual might even be tempted to conclude that the reserved relationship lacks depth and intensity. This phenomenon is true in a variety of situations. People who are used to informal meetings of a group might think that adherence to formal meeting is strange and stilted. Employees in an organization where suits are worn every day may react with the and questioning when they enter the organization, where casual attire is a standard practice. Someone from culture that permits one man to have only one wife may find it quite inappropriate that another culture allows one man to have multiple wives. With regard to culture, the tendency for many people is to equate different with wrong, even though all cultural elements come about through essential identical communication. Though the cultures are made from communication, communication made from culture, it differs in one way or the other by mental thinking. So cultures change over time. In fact, cultures are ever changing, though the change is sometimes very slow and imperceptible. Many forces influence cultural change. Cultures are largely invisible. Much of what characteristic cultures, relationship groups, organizations, or societies invisible to its members. Much as the air is invisible to those who breathe it, language, of course, is visible, as are greeting conventions, especially symbols, places, spaces. However, the special and defining meaning that these symbols, greetings, places, spaces have for individual in a culture are far less visible. For example, one can observe individual when they greet, but hug when they greet. But unless one has a good deal more cultural knowledge, it is difficult to determine what the behavior means in the context of the culture of their relationship, group, organization, or society. In other words, it is difficult to tell without more cultural knowledge. If a hug is a customary greeting among casual acquaintance, or if such a greeting would be reserved for family members or a couple. As another example, beef steak is thought of an excellent food in some cultures. However, if one were a vegetarian or a member of a culture where the cow is sacred, that same steak would have an entirely different cultural meaning. Okay. So, what are the glimpses of culture? For a reason noted above, opportunities to see culture and dynamic relationship that exist between culture and communication are few. Two such opportunities do occur when there are violations of cultural conventions or when there is a cross-cultural contact. When someone violates an accepted cultural convention, ritual, or a custom, for example, by speaking in a foreign language, standing closer than usual while conversing, or discussing topics that are typically not discussed openly, or other members of the culture becoming aware that sometimes inappropriate is occurring, and normal cultural practices are occurring. Members of the culture think little of it. When the violations occur, the members are reminded, if not monetarily, of the pervasive role that cultures have on a daily life. So these situations often are associated with some awkwardness as the people strive to understand, sometimes to adapt to the characteristics of a new culture. In these circumstances, again, one gains a glimpse of culture and not process by which people create and adapt to culture. Okay. Next is the concept of information and knowledge in the society. The term information society has been proposed to refer to the post-industrial society in which information plays a pivotal role. It is a much broader concept than that of an information economy. However, there is one general agreement on one definition or on the defining characteristics. Over the last half century, there have been several efforts to conceptualize the essential characteristics of an information society. In which direction, according to some thinkers, the society will evolve. The various definitions that have been proposed over the years, there have been 5 underlying characteristics of an information society, that is, technological, economic, sociological, spatial, and cultural. Information society is a term used to describe a society and an economy that makes the best possible use of new information communication technology. In an information society, people will get the full benefits of new technology in all aspects of their lives, at work, at home, and at play. For cash withdrawals, ATMs for cash withdrawals and other banking services, mobile phones, teletext televisions, faxes, information services such as internets and emails. So information society is defined as a society based on information and knowledge. Information society is an evolving concept that it is now at its youth, at the present, here and there. Islands of information societies are taking shape. This is early stage of information society. It will evolve as an information age unfolds. That all these islands will join together, forming a global information society. Information society demands and promotes clarity, precision, honesty, and openness. Dishonest politicians and officials cannot survive in this society. They can no longer fool citizens by false stories, for a wealth of information would be available for every citizen who can simply look up and discover the facts. Information society is governed by knowledge competence and only informed decisions and actions. There will be no room for incompetence in this society. The wealth of information and knowledge available for the citizens of information society provide an environment where only informed, knowledge, competent individuals can survive as managers, leaders of the society. What is the age of information? To what extent will the television experience be repeated with the onset of the age of information? The question is difficult, if not impossible, to answer at this juncture. Age of information, according to can be identified generally through the presence of 6 characteristics. What are they? Information exchanged as a commodity, large information workforce, interconnectedness among individuals and institutions, special status of a scientific knowledge, a social environment with many messages and challenges, widely diffused information technology. All of these elements to greater or a lesser extent exist today. The issue of magnitude that then becomes paramount in determining whether the age information has indeed arrived, and the best answer probably can be structured in keeping with the extent to which the interactive media have been pervasive in the society. The electronic grid readily could provide all the media convenience of a computer at a negligible cost by enabling individuals to access use mainframes by telephone or cable systems. So all are engaged in what for years have been simply and lucrative pursuits, selling information for profits. The sale of information for profits underpins all the communication disciplines. Advertising, marketing, public relations, sales, promotions, all add values to information that in the end is disseminated by the mass media. All of the costs untimely are paid by consumers. So age of the information. Next comes is the cultural concepts of an information society. What are the cultural concepts of an information society? The cultural conceptions of an information society is closely related to information environment in which we now live. This environment has been more penetrative, more intimate, and more constituent for our everyday lives. There are several dimensions to this development. First, there has been extraordinary increase in information and social circulation, due mainly to technological advances, access to a wide range of news and analysis, entertainment, personal and community help from across the globe through various media, that is radio, television, internet, newspapers, magazines, and almost anywhere and anytime, has assured the coming of media-laden society. In this new social order, while there is a freedom of choice with regard to a particular medium, the penetration of some level of information in everybody's life has been inevitable. Second, social interaction have become more complex and verbal and written communication have been inadequate to keep up with these complexities. As a result, for example, the symbolic import of dress and the body has dramatically increased. In the agrarian peasant society or even in the industrial society, clothes were just a way of satisfying one basic human need, and uniformity of clothes. The peasants or the industrial workers downplayed any other purpose. The availability of cheap and fashionable clothing and the possibility of affordance it enhances the usefulness of clothing and makeup as important ways of signaling status, power, and affiliation. Third, the excessive penetration of information has also created problems. So what does this mean? Culture, this information, a culture concept of an information society. With the information moving to nook and corners of the villages through various mass media, it has helped the society to grow up. So also it has helped the society. It has also made the society in problems because we see because of the upcoming trends and all. First, to spend a simple and silly example is we generally, as Indians, we are a common attire is a sari or a chudidar, and but we get influenced by the foreigners of wearing all the other things what they wear. They wear because their culture suits it, but we, by looking at them, we take those dresses which may not be adopted, which may not be correct for us. But okay, for fashion we may take. So that is not on the good move. Instead, you can take good things from them, like dignity of labor can be taken from them, or like equalness can be taken from. There is no up and there is no higher status, no lower status in the other countries, which is never followed in India. So good things ought to be adopted, bad things to be removed. That culture should take. But the cultural concept and information in both ways is it plus is there, a minus is there, and how we perceive that matters. That's what is in this chapter. So this chapter is all about cultures, characteristic, how the communication affects the change, how it is making social changes, and what are the types of communications and how why a communication is important, in what ways it is to be taken, and how it impacts the society, and how it makes the social change, and how it unites the people and how it differs the people, and how the communication and culture are both vice versa, how it has shaped the culture and how the culture has shaped the communication. The characteristics of culture and glimpses of culture and concepts of information and knowledge in the society. How the age of information is important, how it is transferred to people, how it is going to nook and corners of the village by using a mass media, all we read in this chapter. So what are the model questions asked in this are: describe the role of communication in society, explain the concepts of information and knowledge in society, discuss the impact of society on communication process, describe the communication and social change, and explain in brief about communication and culture. These will be the questions asked in this chapter. So we are done with these two chapters. Later in next session or next week, we'll have two more. So total 12 are there. Now today we are done with 5th and 6th. Next class is 7th and 8th. And after that, two classes, we'll finish the remaining chapters. This is about academic part. And how about our things, if everybody is listening, we had one assignment, no? Are you all through with that? If you are all through, you can share me in that WhatsApp group. You were all supposed to write one para, no? From 100 words like that of the points of your liking and all. All are able to listen to me?
Yes, madam.
Yeah, you were supposed to send. Now we are not having any physical classes from now on. So we can do it online also sometime. If you can send me all those in WhatsApp, because we have a group created, I'll just go through and we'll give you feedbacks on it.
Okay, madam.
Okay?
Okay, yes, madam.
Okay. Any more doubts? If you have any doubts, this study material is shared with you, on, I think. If it is shared with you, then okay. Or else you let me know, I'll share in the WhatsApp group. Okay? If you are through, then okay, I am done. You can move on to the next class. Hello? Next week, chapters of discussions would be mass communication. And what else? Mass communication and journalism. These two will discuss in the next class, okay? If you're all okay, then I'm through. I'm leaving the meeting, okay?
Okay, ma'am.
Okay, bye.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.